The memory remains etched in my mind with painful clarity, the day my mother uttered those devastating words, "You were the wrong child to believe in." The statement hung in the air, devoid of emotion, delivered without a flicker of remorse. Her gaze remained steady, unflinching, as she methodically folded her napkin and continued to chew, as if condemning her own daughter to insignificance was merely a routine Tuesday occurrence. Around the polished mahogany table, the charade continued. My father, my brother, his picture-perfect fiancée, they all sat there, feigning ignorance, pretending not to notice the internal hemorrhage that threatened to consume me. A profound, isolating silence descended. When I rose, a silent specter, and quietly excused myself from the suffocating tableau, no one attempted to stop me. No one even bothered to acknowledge my departure with a glance. That night, fueled by a potent cocktail of despair and defiance, I impulsively booked a one-way flight to Virginia. There were no tearful goodbyes, no dramatic confrontations. Just a single, burning thought seared into my consciousness: one day, the weight of that silence will suffocate you. Years relentlessly marched forward. They moved on, their lives unfolding without me, displayed proudly and publicly for all to see. Meanwhile, I deliberately retreated into the shadows, embracing a clandestine existence. I accepted a position within the government, a job no one openly discusses, dedicating myself to protecting a country that remained blissfully unaware of my existence. Then, the earth-shattering arrival of the Black Hawk helicopter shattered the mundane quiet of my adopted Montana town. It descended from the heavens, a thunderous symphony of steel and fury, landing in the open field behind the local school. My neighbors stood frozen, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and bewilderment. The students stared, their youthful curiosity piqued by the unexpected spectacle. And then, as the officers emerged from the aircraft and addressed me by my full title, Director Claire Monroe, "The Pentagon requests your immediate presence," a collective gasp rippled through the onlookers across the street. I didn't cast a backward glance. There was no need. This time, it was my name that reverberated through the valley, the same name they had so callously attempted to erase. My name is Claire Monroe, and my family once dismissed me as a failure. But now, even the Pentagon recognizes my worth. Before I delve into the depths of my story, I yearn to feel your presence, to know you are with me on this journey. Please, take a moment to type listening in the comments, or share the location from which you are watching. I am always moved by the sheer reach of my story, because sometimes the smallest connection can be the catalyst for feeling seen and heard. And if my experiences resonate with you, I implore you to subscribe to this channel. Your support will help this narrative find those who have been silenced, dismissed, or left behind. Thank you. And now, allow me to unveil everything. There is a particular brand of silence that can only be born from the crushing realization that no one knows you exist. That was the oppressive quiet that enveloped my modest one-bedroom apartment in Alexandria, Virginia. The space was devoid of personal touches, lacking photographs or sentimental clutter. Only the bare essentials occupied the room: a laptop, a desk lamp, a worn-out leather chair, and a small wooden box containing my Department of Defense badge. Beneath my pillow rested a Glock 19, a constant reminder of the world outside. I was not one to receive visitors, nor did I engage in polite conversation with my neighbors. The inhabitants of this building were a collection of retired Navy SEALs, former NSA cryptographers, and seasoned intelligence analysts, all of whom had long abandoned the habit of asking questions. My name was just another phantom among them, lost in the sea of forgotten faces. Every day commenced with me logging in under an assumed identity, a carefully constructed alias known only to a select circle of 5 individuals within the federal government. My designation: Director of Vanguard, a clandestine unit operating under the auspices of the Department of Defense, dedicated to the relentless pursuit and neutralization of cyber threats aimed squarely at the infrastructure of the United States. I maintained a direct, unfiltered channel to the Pentagon, possessed access to satellite networks whose existence remained unknown to the vast majority of intelligence agencies, and held the authority to initiate protocol lockdowns across multiple branches of the military. Yet, paradoxically, my true name remained shrouded in secrecy, a state of affairs I found strangely comforting. My mother, Ellen Monroe, a woman who had once fearlessly reported from the front lines as a hard-hitting war correspondent, would, if pressed on the rare occasions she acknowledged my existence, vaguely allude to my involvement in clerical services. Age had transformed her into a brittle, embittered woman who now filled her afternoons with impassioned, often vitriolic, rants on local news programs, lamenting the perceived decline of American resolve. My father, George, a once revered naval strategist whose tactical acumen had struck fear into the hearts of adversaries, had grown even more distant and emotionally unavailable with the passage of time. He adorned his chest with an array of medals, each representing a chapter of his distinguished career, but none held as much significance to him as the one he felt I would never earn. And then there was Nathan, my brother, Yale-educated, razor-sharp in intellect, and so impeccably polished that his very presence seemed to exude an aura of success. He was the golden son, the embodiment of the Monroe family legacy, a highly influential federal prosecutor based in Chicago who boasted an unblemished record of victories. I remember my mother remarking with a sigh, Nathan was destined for greatness. Claire was simply born angry. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps I was, perhaps I still am. In 2017, during what the media would later sensationalize as the Seattle incident, I spearheaded an off-the-book cyber sting targeting a sprawling multinational hacker syndicate. The operation, however, spiraled out of control. A seemingly contained data leak rapidly escalated into a full-blown public relations catastrophe, and my name, though conspicuously absent from any official records, somehow became inextricably linked to federal failure. Headlines screamed with indignation, top secret operative linked to national security breach. The DoD, in a calculated move, remained conspicuously silent. My security clearance was promptly reissued under a black-level protocol, effectively banishing me into the shadowy realm of clandestine operations. My family didn't bother to call, didn't extend the courtesy of inquiring whether I was even alive. They threw a lavish birthday party for Nathan that year and inadvertently sent a group photograph to my old email address. I was conspicuously cropped out of the frame, erased even from their memories. Then came the terse, impersonal text message from Nathan, Dad's being honored next week in Denver. Mom wants you there. Don't make it complicated. Not hi, not Claire. Just a cold, clinical order. I stared at it for what felt like an eternity, the pixels burning into my retinas. It wasn't just the blatant arrogance that stung, although that was certainly present. It was the stark reminder that, in their eyes, I remained someone who had to be carefully managed, tightly contained, perpetually expected to falter. The expectation of failure was the most hurtful thing of all. A profound unease had been gnawing at me for weeks, a suspicion that my family's story was steeped in something far more sinister than mere happenstance, something beyond a twisted footnote in the nation's collective memory. It was time to confront them, to gaze into their eyes and acknowledge the uncomfortable truth. They were entangled in a darkness, and my naive pretense of their innocence had to cease. Denver greeted me with an unforgiving chill, a bone-deep cold that seeped into your marrow before you even disembarked the plane. I secured a rental car, ensuring my name was conspicuously absent from the paperwork, and deliberately chose the circuitous route of back roads through familiar, yet haunting, neighborhoods. I passed the street where my father, with a mix of exasperation and pride, had patiently taught me to master the stick shift. The bakery, where Nathan and I had once waged epic battles over peanut butter cookies, stood as a bittersweet reminder of a simpler time. Yet, no one recognized me. Anonymity was the deliberate cloak I wore. The hall chosen to honor my father resembled a federal courthouse far more than a celebratory venue. Arched ceilings soared overhead, beneath which two-story American flags hung with solemn grandeur. Stern-faced military guards stood sentinel at every door. It was abundantly clear, this was not merely a family tribute, it was a state-sanctioned homage to the Monroe legacy, amplified by a live stream for regional television. At the reception desk, the woman meticulously scrutinizing names offered a polite, yet perplexed, smile. You're not listed on the primary seating chart, she stated, her gaze flicking back to the screen. We'll seat you at a supplemental table, 15, near the back. Table 15, a flimsy folding round, was strategically positioned beside the emergency exit and a lukewarm coffee station. To my left sat a Georgetown professor, a former advisor to Nathan on constitutional law. He cast a fleeting glance at my name tag and subtly shifted his chair a few inches away, a gesture that spoke volumes. To my right, a woman whose connection to the event remained shrouded in mystery, remained engrossed in the endless scroll of dating apps throughout the first half of the event. My mother, seemingly oblivious, never once turned around. Nathan was engulfed in a sea of handshakes and backslaps, basking in the spotlight. My father, ramrod straight and stoic, stared ahead with the unwavering gaze of a general surveying a battlefield. And then, the moment arrived, the speech. Nathan ascended the stage with the practiced ease of a man born to command. Each syllable was carefully rehearsed, each gesture precisely calibrated. My father, Colonel George Monroe, embodies a rare form of honor seldom seen in modern America. His service, his discipline, his unwavering commitment to this country, it's a legacy we all strive to uphold. The we felt hollow, exclusionary. He wasn't including me, it was a declaration solely for himself. A quiet, yet audible, laugh escaped my lips, a single beat of insolence in a room steeped in reverence. At that precise moment, the doors swung open. A man in a crisply pressed uniform, his dark green chest adorned with an array of medals, his posture radiating military precision, walked purposefully toward my table. Head swiveled, conversation ceased. He didn't falter. "Director Monroe," he announced clearly, snapping to attention. "It's an honor." My mother's napkin fluttered to the floor, a silent testament to the unfolding drama. A cold dread washed over Nathan as he stood there, completely stunned, his mouth agape. Finally, my father swiveled to face me, an uncommon occurrence. "Is that right?" Deigning to acknowledge my existence for the first time in nearly a decade, "Are we?" I simply gave a single, affirmative nod. "Thank you, Lieutenant Walsh," I stated, my voice betraying none of the turmoil brewing within. Derek Walsh, a man I knew well from his service under my command in Dubai, was a study in unwavering loyalty and efficiency. He wouldn't have traveled all this way unless the matter was of critical importance. He dispensed with pleasantries, diving straight into the heart of the matter. I rose to my feet, trailing him past a sea of bewildered faces and down a long corridor tucked away behind the Grand Hall. We halted just beyond the security checkpoint. "Nexus 7 has suffered a breach," he revealed, his voice hushed and grave. "The point of initial intrusion has been meticulously traced back to a law firm located in Chicago. Specifically, your brother's firm." I stared at him, incredulous. "Whose credentials were used?" He extended a tablet toward me. "Olivia Pierce, Nathan's senior associate. The forensic analysis indicates a 98% probability of her involvement. Furthermore, there's something else you need to know. An encrypted relay signal bounced off a commercial satellite last week. The signal route's origin leads back to someone we both know intimately, Marcus Kane." The mere utterance of that name sent a shiver of apprehension down my spine. Kane wasn't just some run-of-the-mill hacker, he was a notorious digital mercenary who once attempted to auction off highly classified NATO intelligence on the dark web. I had painstakingly buried that case, effectively neutralizing him, or so I thought. "Are you suggesting that my family is being exploited, used as pawns in some elaborate scheme?" I questioned, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. "I'm conveying that the breach originated, quite literally, from your family's front yard," Derek clarified, his gaze unwavering. My eyes drifted down the hallway, toward the dazzling lights and the sounds of cheerful applause. "I'm not going anywhere," I declared, my resolve hardening. "Let them continue to believe that I'm the prodigal daughter who returned home only to be forgotten." Then, I turned my attention back to Derek. "They desire a ghost, a forgotten entity. Let's grant them their wish." I wasted no time in idle speculation. That very night, I meticulously assembled a custom thumb drive, encased in military-grade housing for durability, adorned with deceptive branding, and loaded with a decoy presentation file focusing on digital privacy law. But then, the system logs registered an anomaly. I detected data actively being moved from a restricted access folder labeled Research Archive. The files were being systematically duplicated to an external cloud server, utilizing a complex VPN chain that terminated in Seoul, South Korea. That location marked the last confirmed sighting of Marcus Kane. The contents of those purloined data folders weren't merely confidential, they constituted integral components of Nexus 7's core architecture, strategic response protocols, satellite relay permissions, and vulnerability matrices. Someone within Nathan's firm wasn't simply engaging in unauthorized browsing, they were actively selling privileged access to the highest bidder. I initiated a deep dive to trace the digital fingerprints. The login credentials unequivocally belonged to Olivia Pierce. However, when the biometric access log surfaced, retina scans, keystroke signatures, room entry timestamps, they pointed directly to Nathan himself. My hands froze over the keyboard, paralyzed by a wave of conflicting emotions. Was he being manipulated, a pawn in a larger game? Or, even more disturbingly, was he willingly complicit in this act of digital treason? I desperately needed to uncover the truth. Under the guise of inviting Nathan to lunch, I reached out, though he proposed a less formal walk instead. We convened at a modest park situated near the city's core, the kind adorned with wood-chip paths and couples exercising with their golden retrievers. He appeared wearied upon arrival, shadowed by dark circles beneath his eyes, his phone already clutched in his hand before even a greeting. Initially, I engaged in casual conversation, touching on the weather, Denver's burgeoning growth, and the novel ethics code making waves throughout the Justice Department. Eventually, I steered the discussion toward my true concern. Do you ever worry that someone might be exploiting your name? I inquired, carefully observing his reaction. Nathan arched an eyebrow, a flicker of suspicion crossing his face. That's an oddly specific question. I shrugged, feigning nonchalance. You occupy a position of considerable influence.